That video represented one of the happier times in my life when my son was learning to walk. And these are pictures of him, just a few pictures of him as he was growing up. And there's a picture at the end where he's got his arms around my neck and he's hugging me and he's looking up, and it's all in his eyes. He's saying, "I love you, Dad." And these are days that I really treasure, and it's kind of hard for me right now to look at those pictures. Because there was an incident that really changed my life forever. A friend of mine and I were out on the river kayaking one Saturday last August. We'd started early and we paddled hard all day, played hard in the water. We're diving in the current, and just by the time we got to our put out, we were both exhausted. And we called our wives to tell them that we were out of the water and we were heading home. And when I called my wife and spoke with her, she said, "There's something that I have to tell you about." And you know, that news that she gave me really rocked my world, and it was extreme. And what was to follow was an extremely difficult place for me to be. It was uncomfortable. It was extremely emotional. It was extremely expensive. I was in a hard place all of a sudden. So this morning, I'm going to take my mask off. I don't know how many of you were there last Saturday. Stephen talked about taking our masks off. And maybe a lot of you have seen me over the last year and asked me how I was doing. And I said, I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing fine. And but really, I'm going through this hard time right now. So I'm going to go to a place this morning that I wouldn't normally choose to go, and share with you all about some things I really wish I didn't have to share, because it's hard. And that same son that you saw learning to walk in the video grew into a young adult. He made a series of bad choices, and he severely injured another young man. I won't get into the details of it, but that's what happened. And this other young man was clinging to life in a local emergency room. His injuries were life-threatening, is what they told us. And this is the news I'm getting on the phone from my wife when we pulled out of the river. And I got a knot that was tightening in the pit of my stomach as I heard that. And I pondered the consequences of my son's actions. Right away, the guy I was with and we prayed. We prayed first that the young man would live. And we kept praying, and we prayed that, you know, if he did live, that he wouldn't have any long-lasting injuries. All his faculties would be there. We prayed for wisdom and strength to deal with the situation, because I didn't know what I was going to do. We prayed for my son. And then I drove home. It was the longest 1-hour drive I think I've ever had. And as I drove, I wept. One of the absolute hardest things I ever had to do was drive my son to the sheriff's office to be interviewed and subsequently arrested. Even though the investigator said, "I just want to talk to him," I knew what was coming. I knew that he was going to be arrested. And it was You know, this was late at night. It was after we had been on the river all day. We were already exhausted. You know, my strength was gone long before I was dealing with this. And we were there all night. And in the wee hours of the morning, they walked us to this room where there was a camera. My son faced the camera, and the TV came on, and there was the judge somewhere else. And over a video conference, the judge sentenced my son to aggravated malicious wounding. No bail was set, and an officer led him away in handcuffs. They put him in maximum security prison with all the other felons in there, you know, 30 or 40 other felons who had committed their own offenses against the Commonwealth. And I was just in a state of bewilderment. I really was walking through what I knew I had to, but I didn't realize, you know, the severity of it until I was standing there. And I read this posted information on the wall there about what my son was charged with. It all began to hit home even harder. The charge was a Class 2 felony. It was punishable by a minimum of 20 years to life and a $100,000 fine. I remember having to tell myself to breathe. I got in my car wondering if I had done the right thing handing my son over to the authorities. I felt like I had betrayed him. As I drove home, I cried. I cried out to God. I said, how did this happen? How did I get to this difficult place? What are you trying to teach me? You know, we all have those of us that have children and they grow up into young adults, we wonder if we've done the right things. If, even if you have, you're still going to wonder, you know, have I wondered, did I spend enough time with him in the Bible? Did I spend enough time praying? Did I teach him the right life lessons? So we're going to fast forward a little bit on into the past year. You know, it was this time last year that this initially happened. It was August. Since I was a young Christ follower, I'd never been able to make much sense out of this Bible story. But lately I've been reading it and pondering over it. I know the lesson that God is trying to teach me through this incident is in this story. And it's in Genesis 22. It's a story of when God called out to Abraham, and Abraham said, "Here I am, God," because Abraham had this really, really close relationship with God. He could hear God's voice. He was listening all the time. And when God called Abraham's name, Abraham said, "Here I am," just like that, the Bible says. And God said, "Take your son Isaac and go to this place and build an altar, and put your son on that altar and sacrifice him as a sacrifice to me." And I used to think, when I read that story, what kind of God would ask a man to lay his son on the altar and put his son to death as a sacrifice and as an offering? It really confused me, and I used to think, what must have Isaac thought as his father was binding him up with a rope, tying his hands, tying his feet together, tying him down on the altar. What must have Isaac thought? And today, if someone actually did that today, what do you think would happen to him? I mean, Abraham would have faced arrest himself. He would have faced a charge of murder if he carried it through. Endangerment to a child. It just confused me. And in previous times when I read it, I got all wrapped up in those questions. But as I thought about it, I realized that Abraham was modeling an example of perfect, unwavering trust in God. At that point in his life, Abraham believed that God was good. He believed that God would not let harm come to his son, even if the knife came down. Now I'm going to keep my mask off here and be honest and tell you that in my mind I've not laid my son down on the altar. I'm not able to go there yet. It takes the kind of trust that I really don't have yet. And I'm looking all around for the sacrificial lamb that's in this story. I know that's what Abraham was thinking in the back of his mind. You know, it says right in the Bible, where's the lamb? God, where's the lamb? That's what Abraham was thinking. And the lamb didn't show up quite yet, and Abraham was ready to do what God had asked him to. And then at the last minute, angels came and said, wait, here's the lamb God provided. And my big lesson is, you know, I'm looking around and I'm saying, am I in control of any of this? Because back when this video was shot and these pictures were taken, I felt like I was in control. You know, I was raising a family, I was working, bringing